Okay, welcome home racing fans. I'm going to do what I consider some light tuning, Pioneer Charger, and the tuning that we do here, any of the mods, they're the same stuff you're going to do to other cars, Camaro, Mustang, etc. But we're going to start with the Charger. We're going to try to keep the stock running gear if possible. We'll inspect it. That's the goal. We are going to add a new guide, so we'll be changing that out, doing some body mods and some chassis modifications, but to me it's still light tuning. So let's get right to it and see what we can do to get this car to run a whole lot better out here on the lumber. One of the first things we're going to talk about is body to chassis float, which it doesn't have any right now, and that's because of the body to chassis fit. As you can see here and on the edges and up front here, it's just too tight. So you can loosen these screws all you want, it's not going to do anything. That and a little bit of the interference down here where the interior tray is, going to show you some quick mods there. So we'll get this taken apart and we're going to radius, as I like to call it, or sand the outer edges of the chassis. Okay, so as we take the chassis apart to get ready to do the modifications, that includes the guide. So there's been a lot of talk about the guide, and I'll just tell you how it is for me. I do not like it. There, I've said it. It has too much free play. This whole quick disconnect design, whatever it's for, nobody I know uses it. It's just a whole lot of free play. The height of the guide isn't ideal either. The front wheels bear too much weight in my opinion. And finally, the guide blade itself is just ridiculously shallow to be compatible with old, outdated Scalextric track. So I'm hoping that we can move on. I don't know how many years it takes, but we can move on to put a decent guide in a slot car that has a little bit of depth in it. So now you know why we changed this out. I just don't like the design all the way around. So we're going to pop this out. Going to get rid of this wiring because we're going to do hard wiring anyway. Then we're going to remove our side pipes here using a Dremel and a milling bit to get down in there and to get rid of these. And then we're going to radius the chassis. But anyway, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing on the guide. We'll get to those aftermarket parts here in just a few. Okay, we have everything removed. I left the motor in there, but everything else is gone. And we're going to start just radiusing, sanding the outer edge here. You might be able to see a little bit of line that I put right there, but mostly I go about 1 millimeter and then I test fit the chassis to the body. But we're going to go all the way around these edges here, all the way through here on the back and around the front. To do that, one of the greatest tools ever, good old Dremel, fresh sanding barrel, makes quick work of it. There's other tools you can use. I'll show you those real quick, but most times a Dremel is all you need. So if you don't have one, now's a great time to buy one. Good old Harbor Freight tools. They're perfect for working on slot cars. So belt sanders like this, really, just make quick work of that. Just be very careful. You don't want to go too far. And plus, you have other tools like that. This one here is really good for doing that and keeping a flat edge too. But that's why I have these tools. I mean, they're Harbor Freight. You're not going to make a living with them, but working and adjusting with toy cars, they do the job. So hopefully you can see here that using the Dremel, I didn't have to try to remove this pipe. You can get to it carefully by using the edge and sanding it away and then cleaning up anything with a knife. And you can see pretty much right there, this is yet to be sanded, just about how much I'm taking away. Like I said, always test fit as you go. You don't need a whole lot. Time to talk a little bit about the body and the interior. First of all, let's just go straight to the front. As you can see, I put the bumper back on. My Yeehaw bumper, it's back on there. I'll show you some photos where I cut it away from the chassis. And then I just mounted it here. And I used some UV glue. I like the ultraviolet glue that you can get off Amazon, anywhere else, and a good flashlight, the UV light, really rock solid, puts it on there. So second thing you're going to want to do right here, these supports for the bushings, to help keep the bushings in place. You don't need those. We want to get rid of those, and the ones in back too, you can just snip those right off. And then finally right here, you should be able to see this line right here of material on the bottom of the interior, and these screw holes right here, which we definitely don't need. All of that gets sanded away. I use a cutting disc. I can cut this off and sand all that flush, because we don't want that interfering in the with the chassis. And now that we've got our chassis all sanded, all the edges, just time to test fit. Put it around here. Now you can see back and front, see that distance there, and in the front as well. Now we're not doing the whole clamshell routine. The chassis has room to float and to move around, and that was the goal. My best suggestion is to remove the interior from the body, so you don't mess the body up, just in case you make a mistake. It's really easy to do. I use a Dremel with a small milling bit, and I grind away these post melts here. There's two there, and then the two here in front. Grind those away. Once you break those loose, this will pop right out. Pretty easy. And now you can work with it safely. Okay, so I've sanded this. The material here wears away, so it's pretty handy showing you how far I went. Not very far, just to get that flush. But if you sand a little bit far like I did here, and you might sand away the post melts for the driver, the seats and stuff, I just put a little zap of real thin super glue there, and that'll hold it in place so they don't fly out. So that's it. Now we can put this back into the body. We'll test fit the chassis, but we're all good to go, and we're all finished. It's looking really good. I put the screws back in there. Now you can see we have nice float. It's just about where we want, and you can adjust it. The screws that Pioneer uses, they have a small smooth shoulder, really helps there. But there it is. Now why do you want this? Well, non-magnet racing, and even in some cases magnet racing, but most times in non-magnet racing, isolating the vibration between the chassis and the body is a good thing. The chassis, the tires, it's hooking up, it's on fire. You go through the corners and you can just see it and hear it chatter. That's just because there's nowhere for the vibration to go. So being able to loosen this chassis, give it some float, allows that, and the car is just a smoother operator in the corners, going in, braking, just overall a good thing. So even though it doesn't have the pod assembly like the competition brands, adding this float goes a long way. So anyway, we're done with that part. We're going to take it back apart now. We're going to work on the guide and get our running gear straightened out. But I hope this helped you for part one. We'll see you here soon for part two.